Hi and welcome to The Call. I'm Cathy Morrissey, your host for the teleseminar series, Brand You, Brand New. I'm so glad you're with me today on this very exciting call. Joining me is my very special guest and my mentor, Bob Proctor. Bob's achievements span over a half a century. He's the best-selling author of You Were Born Rich, a teacher in the hit documentary The Secret. He's also appeared in US talk shows such as Ellen and Larry King Live. He's spoken to thousands of people around the world in seminars and taught Fortune 500 companies just how to increase their profits. In fact, the Bob Proctor brand is internationally delivered through his very successful group of companies. CEO of Life Success Productions, Sandy Gallagher, says, working with Bob will bring you phenomenal results. I'm happy to say that brings me to my other special guest today, Sandy Gallagher. Sandy's been a corporate attorney for over 21 years. He has advised corporate boards and high-ranking executives of companies from startup to Fortune 50. She has joined forces with Bob Proctor to create the most powerful business transformational program of its kind, Thinking into Results. So what does that have to do with branding? You're about to discover it's not your logo that's the secret to a great business or personal brand. 50 years ago, Bob discovered this, and he's here with Sandy to share this with you today. Welcome to The Call, Bob and Sandy.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Pleasure to be here.
Good to be here, Cathy.
Good, thank you. Bob, let's start with you. Many of you will know you from the blockbuster hit The Secret that you were featured in a few years back. Can you please tell our listeners just a little about yourself, how you got started in the industry?
Well, I got started in the industry many years ago. I guess you could say I got started in the industry when I first picked up the book Think and Grow Rich in 1961. Although it was a few years before I actually started to work in this industry, I studied the material. I became a very serious student of Napoleon Hill, Earl Nightingale, Andrew Carnegie. And the change in my life was so shockingly dramatic that I had to find out exactly what happened to me, and I really didn't know. I was listening to recordings by Earl Nightingale and Napoleon Hill, and I was reading Napoleon Hill's book, and my life just kept changing. And I'd been raised with the idea that if you're going to earn a lot of money, you've got to be really smart. I was earning a lot of money, and I knew I wasn't that smart. I was raised with the idea if you're going to be in business, you're going to have a very good formal education. I only had 2 months high school, and I was operating a business in 7 different cities in Canada, the United States, and in Great Britain. So I knew that wasn't true, and I reasoned that most of the things I was raised to believe were false. And so I started to study, and I have never stopped. And around 1968, I went to work with the Nightingale Conant Corporation out of Chicago. They were the largest distribution house in the world of self-help material. And Earl Nightingale was the dean of personal motivation at the time. He was the most listened to man in the history of the broadcasting industry, in fact. And I spent 5 years working with Earl Nightingale and Lloyd Conant. And that really just put me deep into this industry that I'm a part of. It's a new industry, but it's a great industry where we help people improve the quality of their life by understanding themselves. And when you start understanding yourself, your whole world begins to change.
Yeah, it sure does, Bob. You've got no question about that. Sandy, that brings me to a question to you. How does a mergers and acquisitions attorney meet up with Bob Proctor? And even more than that, become the CEO and president of his company?
Well, you know, it's an interesting story. I am a big seminar attendee. I like to go to conferences and seminars, and I got invited to this seminar in August of 2006. In fact, the first day of the seminar was August 18th, 2006. And I really didn't know what the seminar was about or what I was getting into. And it was in Vancouver, Washington. And I'll never, ever forget that weekend. I walked into the seminar, and it was a Bob Proctor seminar, The Science of Getting Rich. And it was a 3-day seminar, and it just totally changed my life. And I was sitting there listening to Bob, and he kept teaching us this information that resonated so strongly with me, and yet it was something that I had never ever learned before. I'd never heard of Think and Grow Rich. I'd never heard of, the knowing-doing gap and paradigms and how paradigms can keep us from getting what we want in life. And my mind just started flashing all these pictures of being in the boardrooms with directors and executives and talking about challenges and problems that they were facing and deals we were trying to get done. And I thought, this is the answer to all of it. I just thought of how much this could help all the clients that I was working with. And then Bob said, what do you really want? And, and he has this way of saying, he looks right at you and he says, what do you really want? And I remember having this blank screen on my mind. And I didn't know what I really wanted. In fact, I wasn't even accustomed to asking myself that question. But he didn't give up. He kept saying, what do you want? And he'd have us take a break and sit there and write out what it was that we wanted for our life. And I got this idea that I wanted to create a program with Bob and bring these ideas into the corporate world where I felt they were just hugely lacking, that the corporate world needed this. And then he kept asking the question again, what do you really want? And I thought, I would love, and this idea kind of surprised me, but I thought I would love to work with Bob Proctor and to work with his companies and really be on the inner circle. And I wrote that down in my workbook for the seminar. And I remember kind of laughing at myself. It seemed like such a crazy idea. Here I am. At the time, it was 18 years. But it was 21 years of merger and acquisition law practice. And I really had got to the point where I was at the peak of my practice and things were really rocking. And here I'm entertaining this idea that I want to go work for Bob Proctor. And, I hadn't decided I'm going to give up my practice, but that was sort of part of the picture. And so I developed that desire as a result of that seminar. And then here I am. Working very closely with Bob and running his group of companies that operate all around the world, and I did end up closing my law practice last year.
It's an amazing story, Sandy. Bob, at 76 years of age, you're still travelling the globe, teaching people the power of their mind. I've heard you say that we're all the same. It doesn't matter if you're working in Kuala Lumpur, Boston, or Australia. That's where we're from. But people in general are much the same. We've got people tuning in from all over, some of whom may be thinking that their situation, where they live, or their personal situation is different. This tele-seminar is focused around branding the individual, you. Would you address this and speak to the essence of who we are, please?
Well, if you stop and think about it, the mind of an individual is going to dictate the results that they get. And I think branding starts in our own choice of thought. You have to ask yourself, how do you want to be recognized and where do you want to be recognized? Anywhere you go in the world, there's a culture. And culture is nothing but group habit. There's a culture in Australia, there's one in the UK, there's one in Asia, there's one in America, there's one in Europe. Everywhere you go, there's a culture. Well, culture is group habit. It's people's habitual way of walking, talking, dressing, eating. And when you get past the culture, or the paradigm, because that's what culture is. It's a paradigm. It's a group habit. When you get past that, people are essentially the same. A person's conscious mind in Indonesia works exactly the same as a person's conscious mind in Indiana. A person's conscious mind in Perth, Australia is exactly the same as a person's conscious mind in Philadelphia. The conscious mind operates in exact ways. It's inductive and deductive in its reasoning capacity. Your conscious mind has your senses hooked up to it. It's what enables you to see, hear, smell, taste, touch. They're like little sensory factors that deal with your outside world. Now, your subconscious mind is exactly the same because the subconscious mind is the universal subconscious mind. So someone in Beijing or someone in New York, they're dealing with the same subconscious mind. It is totally subjective. It has absolutely no ability to reject. It will accept anything you give to it. It has no sense of humor. So as you start to study the mind, you're going to realize that people are essentially the same everywhere. They only look different and act different. But the same basic laws of the mind apply to everyone, everywhere. Our problem is we think we're different. We think different culture is a superior culture to another culture. That's absurd. We are all made from exactly the same formless substance. We're spiritual beings living in physical bodies. Now, when you start to talk about branding, what you're really talking about is the projection of who you are or what your business is to the globe. And you're dealing in a global marketplace today. So if you think that you are different than all the rest of the world, you're in trouble. Or if you think the people in China are different than the people in New York or in America, you're in trouble. People in China have emotions, the same as people in Canada or Australia or New England has emotions. And what we're doing with business or ourselves, we're trying to get people emotionally involved in our concept, in our product, in our service. And it all starts in the mind. A person that doesn't understand the mind is going to have a difficult time branding themselves or their business. So we're really all the same. Age has got absolutely nothing to do with it, Cathy. You might ask yourself, how old would you be if you forgot your age? We've got the wrong idea about age. We think people should slow down as they get older. The truth is, if you reason with it, people should actually speed up as they get older. They should be wiser. They should be more aware of who they are and what they are. And if infinite power is omnipresent, that means there's more power in me, and all I have to do is learn how to release it. Well, the longer I'm around, the more I should learn about it. So I think the older you get, the faster you should go. You want to calm down and speed up, and that's exactly what I intend to do. I was talking to Andrea Eritoli, the greatest shoemakers in the world, and he was telling me his grandfather started the business, and he worked until he was 99 and a half years old. He did what he loved to do for almost his whole life until he was 99 and a half. And I told him, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and that's exactly what I think you should do. There you go.
Bob, you are a living, breathing example of that for sure. Sandy, you and Bob have teamed up to produce a fantastic new program that's geared towards either an individual or a company thinking into results. I've heard the story behind this program where you actually use the program and concepts in it to complete the program. It's an interesting story, and I'd really appreciate it if you'd share it with our listeners.
Well, it started in that seminar, Cathy. You know, I'm in the seminar, and I'm thinking I've got to find a way to bring this to the corporate world. And so I created, well, actually, I went then and I just studied absolutely every program that Bob had. And I came up very shortly after the seminar with the name of the program, Thinking into Results. Because one of the key things that Bob teaches is that we can't let conditions and circumstances control the results that we're getting in our life. We've got to let the idea of what we want to create control what's going on in our life. And it's a huge difference. And most people don't do that. They start with their current results. That's just what we're conditioned to do. We look at the balance sheet. We look at the bank statement. We look at the report card. You know, we look at the existing state of our marriage or our relationships, and we gather from that who we are in essence. And so what we want to start with is, who do we want to be? What do we want to do? What do we want to have? And we fall in love with that idea. And then through that, it impacts our thinking. It impacts the actions we take. And that sets up an attractive force that attracts back to us the ideas, the people, and the resources we need to get the results that we really want. And so if you can just kind of picture in your mind, here I'm this corporate attorney doing mergers and acquisitions, and I'm really rocking in my practice. But I've decided I want to create this program with Bob Proctor, and I actually want to go work with Bob. And so everyone in my life thought I had fallen out of a tree. My family, my friends, my colleagues, they're like, are you crazy? You know, you can't just give that up and go do this. And so I had all this opposition. And so as I set out to create the program, I still was practicing law. And so, you know, kind of a major double schedule going. And so I would use the program to create the program. The very first thing was I outlined what would be covered in the program, and that was a big feat because Bob's been doing this for 42 years, going on 43 years. He's been studying it. October 21st, 2011 will be 50 years that he's been studying success principles. How do we live the life that we want to live? How do we have the companies we want to have? How do we get the results we want to have? 50 years. And so I wanted to create a program that would be extremely comprehensive and have the essence of all that Bob has taught for 43 years. And so it was a big feat. And so I had outlined what I wanted to go into the program. And then as the program was being developed, I would study it to create it. So if I was getting stuck on something, let's just say I was getting stuck on a night. I was stuck. I wasn't moving the project forward, and it was an idea that I had in my mind that wasn't allowing me to move forward. Well, then I would go to lesson 2 on the knowing-doing gap, and I would study it. And the point of that lesson is we all know how to do better than what we're doing, but we're not doing it. Why is that? We've got to get ourselves to do what we already know how to do. And so I would study that, and it would allow me to move forward with creating the program. It was a fascinating process.
Sandy, I love the title, Thinking into Results. Since that's where everything starts, you know, from the thoughts that we think and choose. How does a person go about thinking into results? Sandy, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, you've got to start with the idea of what it is that you want. What are the results that you want to get? And then what we tend to do, you remember I mentioned that I had a blank screen. Bob kept saying, what do you want? What do you really want? And I just had this blank screen. It wasn't that I didn't know what I wanted. It's that I would not allow myself to give it conscious consideration, to seriously consider pursuing the idea of what I wanted. And so as I understood myself better through studying with Bob, I started to be able to really give serious thought to what I wanted and then make a decision. This is what I'm going to do. I am going to do whatever it takes to make this happen in my life. And then I started to get emotionally involved with the idea. And once you become emotionally involved with the idea, in other words, turning this want, which is just a thought in your conscious mind, into a burning desire, that is when you really kick in the creative process and start to create the results that you want. Desire is the true starting point when you're going to think into results. And when you get so emotionally involved with that idea and you decide this is what I'm going to do, that's when you literally change your vibration. You put yourself at a higher frequency. And it's only when you do that that you can attract to you the things and people and ideas that you need to turn that into reality. I've never heard anyone even remotely describe this as well as Bob. Bob, why don't you pick up from there and talk about what it really means to think into results?
Well, first of all, thinking is the highest function that a human is capable of. And I want to suggest you think about that. All the rest of the little creatures in the world are totally at home in their environment. They blend in with their environment. The human is the only creature on the planet, so far as we know, that is totally disoriented in his environment. And that's because we can create our own environment. Now, all the great leaders, the avatars, the religious leaders, the philosophers, all of them, all down through history, have been in complete unanimous agreement on one point. They've disagreed on virtually everything else, but on this one point, that we become what we think about. Now, play with that for a moment. They've disagreed on everything else, but they all agree that we become what we think about. Now, the truth is, most people are not thinking. Earl Nightingale, my old employer and mentor, he used to say if most people said what they were thinking, they would be speechless. The first time I heard him say that, I thought, that's really funny. But it's true. And if you don't believe me, listen to what people are saying. They would never say what they were saying if they were thinking. Or stand back and watch what people are doing. They would never do what they're doing if they're thinking. Thinking is, without question, the highest function we're capable of. Now, we can originate thoughts. There's a power flowing into our consciousness. And when it flows in, it has no form. It's without form. Through thinking, we can build pictures in our mind. And then we can take those pictures and turn them into realities in our world. That's how the buildings are built. That's where the telephone came from, the computer, the airplane. Everything that is anything has all been created in the mind. It's first created in the mind and then created in the physical world. It's the transmutation of energy. We dictate how energy can move into form. We have the ability to do that. Now, what most people do, rather than thinking, they just look and see what's going on outside. And the outside world is controlling them. They listen to the news broadcasters. They read the newspaper. They listen to their neighbors. They accept the opinions of others. And they don't really stop and think. Opinions are the cheapest commodity on earth. Everyone has a flock of opinions ready to be wished upon anybody that will accept them. But usually they have no foundation. When we stop and think, we'll probably go in the opposite direction of most people on the planet. 3% of the population earn around 96 to 97% of all the money that's being earned. Now, it's not because those 3% are smarter than the rest. It's that they're thinking and the rest are just following along in lockstep type fashion. The person that thinks will stand out like a giraffe in a herd of field mice. I mean, they just stand above everything else. You can think and grow rich. That's what Napoleon Hill said. And you know something? He was right. Well, this program, Thinking into Results, that I should say that Sandy designed, she produced, directed. I was just a participant in the venture. It has turned out to be one of the best programs that our company has ever produced. Thinking into Results. It has 12 DVDs. It has a phenomenal action planner. And anyone that takes this and uses it is going to see dramatic changes in the result of their life or of their company. So it's a powerful program, and it literally teaches us how to think. And you must understand that thinking is a skill that can be learned just as we learn skills such as typing or playing the piano. Unfortunately, school does not teach us how to think. They do not. It's not a subject that's in the curriculum of any school, and it should be, because it's the highest function that we're capable of.
I wholeheartedly agree, Bob. Bob, the other thing that I know this program is about and has to deal with is paradigms in some way, shape or form. Now, I think that's really what separates your work from all the other speakers in your industry. This is going to be a two-part question. First, talk to us about paradigms. What are they and how do they control our lives, willing or not?
Well, paradigms are, it's like programming. When you have a program in the computer, it dictates what the computer will do insofar as that program is concerned. Well, you have a program in your mind, and your mind operates much the same way as a computer does. In your subconscious mind, there is a program, and a paradigm is a multitude of habits that have been programmed into the subconscious mind through genetics and then through environment. You're genetically structured to follow a certain path in life, and your environment will then support that program. Like, we are the confluence of a genetic pool that goes back for many generations. That's why we look so much like our relatives. You have to ask, how did you get here? A little particle of energy from mom and a little particle of energy from dad came swimming along, and they joined together. They were in harmonious vibration, and that set up, created the nucleus of you. All mom's DNA and all dad's DNA is in that energy. And that, again, that's why you look so much like them. But you have all the characteristics that they had, those little idiosyncrasies, the habit patterns. You grow up liking the food they like, walking the way they walk, talking the way they talk. And now, after you're born, then your subconscious mind is wide open. The conscious faculties have never developed. So your subconscious mind is wide open. And you grow up programmed to speak the language of the people you are surrounded by. You grow up to live the life that is determined by the people that you are surrounded by. If you were born into poverty, the odds are pretty good you will stay there all your life. You don't have to. You have the ability to get out, to think for yourself, and make a break. And many people do. But they're few in number relative to the masses. If a baby is born, let's say, in a suburb of New York City, that baby probably be born to a white Anglo-Saxon English-speaking family. If you took that baby to Beijing and put it in a home in the suburbs of Beijing, that white Anglo-Saxon baby would grow up fluent in Chinese with no knowledge of the English language. Why? Because of the environment it was raised in. We are the product of our environment to a tremendous degree. Well, all that programming is called a paradigm. And the paradigm is a multitude of habits in our subconscious mind. If we don't learn how paradigms are formed and how they're changed, odds are pretty good we will live our whole life getting much the same results. And that's why you find people struggling to improve their life, because they're programmed to live the way they're living. We literally teach people how programs are formed, what they are, first of all, how they're formed, and then how they can be changed. See, my life changed dramatically. No formal education, no business experience, but I have a business now that operates in 80 or 90 countries. We do multi-million dollars in volume. We help hundreds of thousands of people. Why? Because I changed my paradigm. I became something different than what I was growing up to be. I was 26 when I started to understand this. I'm 76 today. For 50 years, I've worked at this. I know a lot about it. It's all I've studied. You study something for 50 years, and you get to the point where you know a lot about it. Well, that's what this company is designed to do, to teach people what paradigms are and how to change them. In other words, to take control over their life.
Sandy, there's a chapter in Thinking into Results called the Knowing and Doing Gap. What is a knowing and doing gap, and how does one go about bridging that?
This is really the most critical thing that we teach, Cathy. It's on how to close the knowing-doing gap. And most people, when they're not getting the results they want, they focus on the behavior, and they try to change the behavior. But that's a secondary cause of the results. The primary cause is the paradigm that Bob was just talking about. John Ruskin, he states it really well. He says, education does not mean teaching people what they do not know. It means teaching them to behave as they do not behave. And so what we want to learn to do is to change the paradigm to support the behavior that we want that's going to get us the results we want. Think of it in a really simple way. Bob tells this story, and I absolutely love it because it tells you so well what the knowing-doing gap is. He said, when he was a kid, the teacher would say, Bob, why did you do that? And he'd say, I don't know. And she'd say, well, you know better. And he'd say, yes, I know. And she'd say, then why did you do it? And he'd say, I don't know. And then he left school and he went in the Navy, and it was the same thing. Why did you do that, Bob? I don't know, sir. And he'd say, well, what do you mean you don't know? You know better. Yeah, I know. Then why'd you do it? I don't know. And it's like, think about it. Think about it in a company. People all over the world in companies are involved in activities that are not going to get them the results they want. And they know that. Or think about a person that's grossly overweight, and they want to lose weight, but they keep eating the food that's going to pack the pounds on. Or someone who smokes, and they know how horrible smoking is for their body, but they can't get themselves to quit. You know? So what is it? It's paradigms, and it's this knowing-doing gap, and it's a source of incredible frustration. But the frustration starts to go away when we understand that we can change it. But we can only change it if we focus on the paradigm. And we have to gain an understanding of how our mind works. And the idea that we've got two parts to our mind. We've got our conscious mind. We've got our thinking mind. We've got our mind, the thinking mind. It takes everything in through our senses, see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. And so the conscious mind can accept or reject or ignore any idea. But the critical thing is that the subconscious mind accepts everything. And it's the subconscious mind where our paradigm or our habit resides. And it's the subconscious mind that is the attractive force. That, in other words, our thinking in our subconscious mind is what determines the results in our lives. And so if we are going to close the knowing-doing gap, first we've got to decide what it is that we're setting out to do. I mean, we've got to be crystal clear on that. And then we have to understand that it's a process to change the paradigm so that it supports getting the results that we want. And when you really gain an understanding of this point, it truly is a turning point. But you've got to go through this period of discomfort. I remember when Bob said, you've got to start doing things that are illogical. And I'm like, what? You know, because here I am, a lawyer, and we prize logic. And he's saying, you've got to start doing things that are illogical. If you want to get something different than you currently got, you have to start doing things differently than you're currently doing it. Right? And so I went through a period of time there where I was doing, everything seemed so illogical to me that I was doing, and it seemed illogical to the people in my life, my family, my colleagues, my friends. But what I was doing was going after what I truly wanted, which was going to give me great fulfillment in my life. And I went through this period of discomfort and a period of giving up something of lesser value for something of a greater value. You know, we've got to make room for the good that we want in our life. And it's all a process when you're closing the knowing-doing gap. It's a process of changing your belief system to support the creation of the results that you want.
Yeah, that's an excellent way of putting that, Sandy. Bob, you and Sandy have infused a little flavour from the Science of Growing Rich program into thinking into results. The final chapter with leaving everyone with the impression of increase. How does someone do that, and why is it important?
Well, I'll tell you why it's important, Cathy. First of all, people want to feel good about themselves. And if you can cause another person to like themselves better or feel good about themselves, they're going to like you very much. You know, Lord Chesterfield said to his son, "My son, cause other people to like themselves just a little bit better, and I promise you this, they're going to like you very much." And so that's the point behind that particular lesson. We want to leave everyone with the impression of increase. We want them to feel better because they've come in contact with us. We want them to like themselves a little bit better because they know us. This is not a difficult thing to do. If we train ourselves to look for the good in everything, and there is good in everything, the law of polarity teaches us that everything has a good side to it. Just like there's an up and a down, a hot and a cold, an inside and an outside, the law of polarity decrees there's both in everything. And if we will train our mind to just see what's good and look for the good in other people, and then bring it to their attention, tell them that we have noticed that. Let them know we see the good in them. We're going to find that we have just a phenomenal life ahead of us. So it's a great lesson for anyone to learn, and it's a pretty good way to guarantee that you're going to have a good future by treating other people the way they really want to be treated, to like themselves a little bit better. It could be a compliment. It might be by providing a little more service to them. It's letting them know that we notice how good they or how well they do something, and we leave them with the impression of increase. It's what all human beings seek is increase. We all want more. We want to do it better. We want to live a better life. We're spiritual beings, and spirits always for expansion and fuller expression. So when we can tap into that side of a person and help them move in that direction, we've done something for them that they will not forget. And we end up winning. You get back what you put out. I love the way Jane Wilhite from Psi Seminars puts it. Givers gain, and they really do. So that's how I see that, Cathy.
It's a fabulous lesson. Sandy, in your work with Bob, tell me one thing that stands out in your mind as to why what he's been able to impart to you and how that's been impactful for you.
Oh, man, do I have to narrow it down to one, Cathy? There are.
I can imagine there must be many.
That is a hard one because working with Bob has just changed my life. It has expanded my world, truly. And I have seen so many examples of Bob changing people's lives. I mean, hugely changing people's lives. I guess I'd want to narrow it down to three things if I could. Because we were just talking about this idea of the impression of increase and being a go-giver. Well, Bob is a go-giver, like you've never seen. He literally is driven by the idea, how can I help people? And he gives everything of himself to help people. And what it does is it's created for him a beautiful and very rich life filled with people who just love him. And I mean, in fact, your listeners should get the book called Inspired. Bob's wife, Linda, created this book called Inspired last year for Bob's 75th birthday. And it's stories of all the family members, the kids, the grandkids, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, and it's stories of how Bob has impacted their life. And it's just a beautiful little book. And every story shows this idea of being a go-giver and how rich it makes your life. It's such an important idea. The other huge impact Bob had on me is starting back in that seminar in August 2006 and asking the question, what do you really want? You know, what do you really want? And at that point, I thought there was something wrong with me because I always wanted more. I always wanted to grow and to expand the experiences that I was having. And Bob explained in that seminar the idea that we are spiritual beings, and our spirit is always seeking expansion and fuller expression. That's what we're here for, is to grow. And I thought, wow, okay, so there's nothing wrong with me. You know? I mean, that's what we're here for. And if we're not growing, we're going backwards. We're disintegrating. We're effectively dying. And so whatever it is inside of you that you want, that wants to be expressed, let yourself express it. Go for it. Go after it. That's what we're here for. And the other thing that Bob emphasizes is this idea of doing your work. Just keep doing your work. Whatever's going on around you, don't get caught up in it. Stay focused on what you are trying to achieve and create, and do your work. And he often, when I'm experiencing some kind of frustration or, you know, meeting obstacles with anything, he'll quote Dean Briggs. And this is such a great quote. And it says, do your work, not just your work and no more, but a little more for the lavishing's sake, that little more that's worth all the rest. And if you suffer, as you must, and if you doubt, as you must, do your work. Put your heart into it, and the sky will clear. And then out of your very doubt and suffering will be born the supreme joy of life. And I absolutely love that because it is so true. And so instead of getting to the point of obstacles and frustrations and putting our emotion into talking about the frustrations, you know, and the obstacles, put our energy and emotion into doing the work and keep doing the work. And I've been working with Bob very, very closely, as CEO for almost 2 years now, and then for a couple of years before that, just following him and being mentored by him. And that is such a consistent theme in Bob's life. Just continually keep doing your work.
He does indeed. That was beautiful, Sandy. Thank you. Bob, we've just got 1 or 2 minutes left. What would you say to all the naysayers who may think this stuff is all just hype? You just can't think into results.
Well, if they're real true naysayers, there's not much you can say to them. I would just suggest that they follow my tracks around the world. I've traveled all over the world. And I've never gone anywhere where I saw a statue built to a critic, not one. But there have been statues built to people that have done great things in their life for other people. You're going to find that the real winners in life are the greatest servants. They enjoy helping people. They believe in the positive aspect of life. They look for the good in themselves and in others, and they're locked into serving others. thinking is the highest function we are capable of. Thought waves are cosmic waves that penetrate all time and space. And whether we understand it or not is another thing. But you know, thought is a more potent form of energy than the laser beam. Your thoughts will penetrate all time and space, and you have the ability to think. You have reservoirs of talent and ability within you that if you work all your life studying, you're never going to tap into them all. There's greatness locked up in you. There's genius locked up in you. And the secret of life is to become aware of how to bring it to the surface, to improve the quality of your life, and then go and help others improve the quality of their life. Do you know, if you're in business, I think that the first order of business is profit. Without profit, you're going to go out of business. But that's not the purpose of any human organization. The purpose of all human organizations is to make life more meaningful. And I believe that's what you're doing with the series that you're creating, Cathy. And I want to congratulate you and your team for doing that. And I think that's what Sandy's doing with our company. She's leading us to new levels. She has brought her expertise, very bright lady, in, and she's sharing it with us all and showing us all how to do a better job, how to reach more people, how to earn a greater profit so we can spread it a little further. I am pleased to be a part of this program of yours, Cathy, and anyone that really wants to make it happen, that wants to make a total shift in their life, thinking into results is the program that will help them do it. Thank you, Cathy, and thank you for participating in this too, Sandy.